Hi, I'm Miss Nickerson.
And I'm Mr. Radford.
Welcome to the Viking Science Academy. We've been learning about genetics so far, and we've been learning about Punnett squares and how things kind of work out off our chromosomes. Today we're going to take that a step further and see how some of your traits are linked to your sex chromosomes, your X and Y, and then some other variations on genetics like codominance, polygenetic, and multiple alleles. So there's a lot of things you can tell by a person by their genetics, yes?
Yeah.
I can't roll my tongue.
The hitchhiker
I can't do anything else, yeah.
My wife, when our daughter was born, that was the first thing she wanted to check because she doesn't have that, and she's anyway. So
there's a lot of your physical traits on the outside as well as on the inside that are genetic traits that we can determine if they're dominant or recessive. We know that they're carried on the male and female alleles, and that males and females can only give one allele to their offspring. If you trace these back, it's called a pedigree. So we do pedigrees with like racehorses and show dogs and that kind of stuff, but humans can do pedigrees too. You can kind of trace it back and you can see if anybody in your family has been affected by something or a trait that's been carried down for many generations. Well, one of the things that we look at is if they're sex-linked recessive traits. And this means that they're carried on one of your sex chromosomes. Now, I have an XX chromosome. What do you have?
I have an XY.
Okay, so that's one of the differences. So I can only pass on X's to my kids, but you can pass on either one. Yep. So really, because I have two X's, females are not... we don't get these kind of diseases as much because both of our X's would have to be infected to get this disease, whereas you only have one X, you're out of luck.
Pop up. Yep.
You're probably going to possibly be infected. One of those is color blindness. So if you're looking at the screen while you're watching these notes and all you see is dots, you could possibly be colorblind. You should see numbers within those dots. And color blindness is passed on from parents to children, and it's a recessive sex-linked trait. And so it's not as often that you will see females infected, but they'll be carriers of the infection. So here's how it works. Both male and females have their chromosomes, and each chromosome can possibly be infected. But if there's a regular chromosome by it, it'll dominate over it. That's why it's a recessive trait. So when you set up your Punnett squares, you would put XX on the top, XY along the side, so females and males. And then if one of the X's or Y's is infected, in class I usually just put a little like one behind it, and so then we know. So we'll be doing some of these in class. And there's some problems you can try if you want to. You can also use letters to represent different ones. So for example, number 1 on the top you'd put X capital B, X lowercase b, and then across the side you'd put X capital B and Y. And the female's only going to be infected if she has X lowercase, but what about the guy?
The guy, if he has any of the B's, he's got it.
And any of the lowercase b's is going to have it, because there's nothing to mask it. So you can try a couple of these, and then we'll do some in class if you'd like to give it a try. And then there's also dominant allele diseases that are on the sex chromosomes. These are kind of rough because that means you automatically get it. There's 0% probability that you're not going to get it. So Huntington's disease is pretty rough, and then lobster foot, which a lot of my students have never seen before. And it's basically contained kind of to an island in the one of the islands in the Caribbean, and it's pretty much 100% of the population who's native there has this disorder because it's dominant. It always gets passed on, so there's really no chance of it not getting passed on no matter who you mate with. So. So some other dominant disorders? Dwarfism,
all these here, Huntington's disease, as you said. So I know in health they really cover a lot of the genetic disorders. A lot in a lot more detail. But.
So a lot of these different disorders are disorders that we see on the outside, and then some of them are disorders that happen on the inside to us. And some of them don't have that big of an effect, like polydactyly, having additional fingers. They can surgically remove those, but then others are really rough, like progeria, which causes you to age super fast, and you usually will die of like old age in your early teens, which is kind of rough disease. Also, albinism is a recessive trait disease. That's why you only see pretty rare to see albino animals.
It is, people.
So the only way you could have an albino offspring is if both the parents were carriers.
And then you got both of those traits.
You get both of those recessive traits, exactly. So there's a lot of recessive disorders as well that can happen to people, and you wouldn't know that you were a carrier because you wouldn't necessarily express that trait. So I could be a carrier for the albinism trait, and if I had a child with someone else that's a carrier, we would have a 25% chance of having offspring that would be infected. So, but not all genes are traits are determined by just one allele.
Yep.
So what's polygenetic inheritance?
Polygenetic means that these are found on multiple genes, and by now we probably would have done the drawing with the chromosomes, and you should have seen this word already. So we can see that some of these traits are found on multiple genes.
So like eye color is just not like one color blue. It's lots of color blues.
You get shades and
and we can still figure out dominance and recessive with eye color, but we can't really figure out the shade of it.
Yep.
And same thing with your
hair color. Yep.
So lots of different genes are helping to determine that. Now, we do know some of where traits are located. So I'm going to throw up just a few chromosomes. These are just a few of the traits that are found on your first chromosome. Migraine headaches can be passed on. Alzheimer's disease, fish odor syndrome. I don't know, but that just does not sound like a fun one. It's actually where your sweat smells a little bit like fish. So I don't need to smell like fish, I don't think so. Chromosome 2, diabetes, obesity, muscular dystrophy, MS. Lots of different diseases, alcoholism. So the more we learn about chromosomes and DNA, the more we're going to be able to pinpoint where these traits are. And then that comes to question, well, should we go on and change them?
It's an ethical thing, and I think eventually people might need to vote on these kinds of issues.
That's what we talk about too.
Yeah,
we need to understand the lingo when we get ready to do those kind of votes. Another example of tracing these alleles is on our blood types, and there's 4 types of blood: A, B, and O. This is an example of codominance. Both A and B are dominant, but together they share dominance, so one does not mask the other. So if you look at what the parent 1 and parent 2 could have in our table here, then you combine those blood types, but only one is going to be expressed. So for example, on the 3rd row down, you have parent 1 with an A, parent 2 with O. Their genotype is AO. Those are their 2 alleles, but we call those blood type A. That's the only way it's expressed. And really the only way you can get blood type O is if both parents give their O. So we'll be doing some blood typing Punnett squares in class as well. So you could do a couple of practice problems. So here's one you could do, and then come to class and see if you got the correct answer, and we'll check that with you guys. So there's a fun song that we'll listen into class. I'm my own grandpa. And thank you guys for joining us for the Viking.
I'm looking forward to that one.
It is. It's a good one. It's a like genetics mystery song.
Oh, all right.
Looking forward to doing some Punnett squares. It's my favorite unit of the year because it's gonna genetics is you guys. You need to understand how you work and what you can pass on. So thanks for joining us for the Viking Science Academy.